Hi, and welcome to the Jam Gamecast. My name's Matt, and I'm your host. Here with me is my co-host and brother, Jim. What's up, Jim?
Hey Matt, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
All right. Well, on tonight's podcast, we have a couple topics we want to talk about. The last couple, we didn't really have topics we wanted to talk about. We just kind of spitballed and freestyled it. But tonight, we have a couple topics we want to talk about. The first topic being clone consoles, and then after that, we're going to go on and talk about repro games or reproduction games. So we'll start out with the clone consoles. Jim, what do you know about clone consoles?
I have a little bit of experience with clone consoles. I've seen them in a lot of malls. Kind of walking through, you see the different kiosks, and that's where a lot of these have been. To me, a lot of them that I've seen have been like plug-in plays that you would do the red, white, and yellow plug, and a lot of them seem to be I guess all in ones or 10 in ones, 20 in ones, so forth. And a lot of the games had been NES or SNES, and even I've seen some Sega ports as well. And then I've also seen and actually tried a couple where it looked like you can actually pop out the 20 game cartridge and then pop in your cartridge for the NES or the SNES. And seen those and have actually considered in the past picking one up, but I never have.
Yeah, so I think the first ones you're talking about, I would consider them plug and plays, like really cheap plug and plays. You can find them at like Rite Aids and stuff like that.
Yeah,
They're usually like 20, $30, and they have like 100 games on them, but like they're kind of like knockoff games of actual real games, or they're just like generic like Pong type games, or real cheap stuff. Um, and then there are ones, and I kind of want to talk more about the ones where they take I'm not real technical, but they take I guess electronics, and they kind of build their own, Nintendo clone or Super Nintendo clone, Genesis clones. They build basically new consoles that can play old cartridges. Um, and the reason why we're talking about this topic tonight, because recently there's been a couple companies that have come out and have said that they're working on CD based clone consoles. Now, of course, these clone consoles aren't going to play Xbox One or PS4 games, but we're talking original PlayStation. We're talking Neo Geo CD, TurboGrafx CD, Sega CD, all those early CD based consoles. There's now a couple companies working on clone consoles for them. Now, some people have different takes on this, and I'm actually surprised, because I'll be the first to admit that I think it's a great idea. Now, I'm not technologically inclined. I'm not good with electronics. I'm lucky I can hook up my consoles and figure out the plugs and everything. But to make my own console or something like that, or download ROMs or files, no way, I can't do it. So the first company I want to talk about, and this is the one that's kind of I've seen on some different channels. Some people are kind of criticizing the company, and it's a clone CD based console called the CD, and it's spelled SEEDI. Um, not not really the best name, because CD, people might say, oh, that sounds seedy, or shady. um, but CD, I guess they're thinking more so like CD. um, so Jim, have you heard anything of this console?
no, I haven't heard much of anything yet, actually. However, it does from your brief explanation there, it sounds intriguing to me. And I'm actually, I guess we might be in the same boat where I think that stuff like this is very interesting. That they that people would take and kind of come up and build their own console. I think that that's pretty cool, actually, in my opinion.
Well, it's cool, but not only that it's cool, but it can play like 4 or 5 different CD based consoles. Like I said, I think it's the Neo Geo CD, TurboGrafx CD, Sega CD, PlayStation 1. Um, I don't know, I might be missing another one that I said previously. But I mean, to have all the ability to play all those games on one console, and it's a newer console, so it's probably built better than those old original CD based consoles. Um, I'm assuming too, they'll probably try to put some sort of HD on it, so you can probably hook it up through HDMI. Why would you not want that? Like, first of all, a Neo Geo CD's super hard to find and super expensive. Same thing with the TurboGrafx CD. Half the time it doesn't work when you try to hook it up to the original TurboGrafx 16. The Duo, which is the Turbo Duo, is like impossible to find, and if you do find it, you're spending a lot of money on it. Why not just buy one brand new console that can play all those games? Um, but I think people's issue, especially with the CD console, is that the way they're doing it is basically they're basically taking this part and they're putting it basically in a case, and it has the ability to play the CDs. And some people are saying, well, you could just build your own, like, and I think that's people's problem with it, is that they're like, well, I can just get that part on my own, program it, and set it up to play on my own. But again, like I said before, I have no idea how to do that. So if somebody's going to build one for me and sell it to me, and it can play all those games from all those different consoles, heck yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'd be crazy not to.
Yeah, that's the great point there. What I think is, I think the same exact thing there. I'm not technologically inclined. I wouldn't be able to tell you the first thing about building my own, building a console or something of this magnitude. And I'd feel much better, knowing that somebody that's trained and can actually do it well has built it for me, and I can reimburse them with money, and I know what I'm getting.
Yeah. Now, I think there might be an additional thing when it comes to the CD clone console. Um, I think there might be something where, um, you might have to do something additionally, like with the ROMs of it or something like that. Like, you have to like do some sort of downloading or something like that. I think there might be something like that. I might be wrong, but I thought that I had heard something like that, that's what it's going to be like. So if that's the case, that might be a put off for me, because I probably wouldn't be able to figure out how to do that. But I mean, if this is something where I can just put in the disc and it'll play for me, I'm definitely interested in buying one.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. If it's just as simple as plug it in, turn it on, put the disc in, I'm sold.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so then there was also a company that came out a little bit before this that's basically doing the same thing. They're coming up with a console that can play all these original or early CD based console games. And this company is called the Polymega, or at least that's what the console is going to be called. Um, this one's a little different though. Has it has like a base that remains the same, and what you do for every different console that you want to play on, you get like you purchase a different like face for it or something like that attaches to the main console. So like if you want to play PlayStation 1, you buy that face and snap it onto your to the console, and then you can play PlayStation 1 games. If you want to play Turbo CD games, you buy the Turbo CD attachment and you hook that on, then you can play Turbo CD games. Um, and I'm not sure how that's gonna go price wise. If you have to buy like a different face to snap on for each different console you want to play, how much is that gonna run you? Um,
Yeah, exactly. I think that could get a little pricey, which in my mind that could hurt them in that area.
right. But if you do some research on these companies and look up all the info out there, the stuff that's out there for the Poly Mega seems so much more official or professional, for lack of a better term. It seems so much it it just seems more official than what the CD seems. If you check out their website, they have a really good website. And I mean, that's not to say just because you have a good website doesn't mean it's going to be a good product. But everything just, to me at least, comes off as being more official. So I kind of have a little bit more confidence in the Polymega product than I do the CD product. Now, granted, this is just on, based off of stuff I've read, videos I've watched, checking out the websites. I have no experience playing the consoles or anything like that, so I'm just basically going straight off of what I've read or heard. So, when the actual products come out, who knows, what'll be better. But so far, just on what I've heard and read, the Poly Mega seems like it might be a safer bet than the CD thing. And also, I'm pretty certain that the Poly Mega is going to be you just pretty much put your disc in and you can play.
Okay, great. Do you know what kind of I guess plugs these are going to have? If they're going to be like HDMI, has that kind of tech specs been released yet?
Yeah,
To your
I
knowledge?
I assume that it'll be HDMI because that's sort of another reason why these new clone consoles exist. Is a lot of people want to play these games in HDMI, and the old consoles without modding them or something like that, or buying special hookups or connectors. Most of them don't play in HDMI. So these clone consoles are a way for people to play their old games and get HDMI output with them.
Yeah, I think for me that would be the biggest seller because you do mention like PlayStation One, the original PlayStation, and I mean, every once in a while I see I still see PlayStation Ones at flea markets, for very cheap, and then also PlayStation One games are backwards compatible on the PlayStation Two, and the PlayStation Two was one of the longest running consoles. So a lot of people might still have that, but people have newer TVs nowadays that aren't that the PlayStation and PlayStation Two are not compatible with really.
Yeah, I mean most HDMI or high def TVs now are HDMI, and they don't take the old AV hookups, so you can't even really play your old consoles on them. So that's
Yeah.
another thing. It's a whole convenience level with it too. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with clone consoles. I do own one. It's called a Yabo or Yobo or something like that, and it's for original NES games. I still have my original NES from when I was a kid, but it doesn't, work very well. The pins might be loose or something, but it doesn't always work the best. So I was at a flea market one time. This video game seller was there selling this clone console for the NES. I think I bought it for like about $15 or something, and it works great. You just put the cartridge in, and it plays right away. No blowing half the time, blowing into the cartridge or cleaning the cartridge. It works pretty much most of the time. And what's also cool is you can use your original controllers with it too. So you can
Oh,
plug,
great.
yeah, you can plug in your original controllers and it still works. So that's my only experience with it. But some people are just like totally against clone consoles for whatever reason. But I mean, I'm not. Like if it makes it easier for you to play old games and it's cheaper to just get like a clone console, why not? I mean, you can still play the original games on it and it probably will work better than most old consoles. Um One of the more popular ones out there is the Retron. Um, and they have different interpretations of it. They have like the Retron 1 that plays just like NES, the Retron 2 that I guess plays NES, Super NES. The Retron 3 plays Genesis, NES, Super NES, and then the most recent one came out a few years ago, I guess, is the Retron 5. This thing is awesome. It plays, Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo. It plays Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. Then there's hookups you can buy, I think, that, let you play Master System games on it or Game Gear games. So all those consoles in one, basically. Now, it's pretty pricey, even for a clone console. I think it's still even over a couple $100, but seems worth it to me. You can play all those console games. It has HDMI output. It has, save states where you can just like, save wherever you are in those old games, because a lot of them you couldn't save on. So they have save states, and it just basically improves on the old consoles and lets you do things that you wouldn't be able to do, but you're still playing those original games. Um, what I think is also cool with the Retron 5 is you can play import games on them. You can basically get a Super Famicom game, plug that in, and then, you know, go online with it and download a translation patch and then play the game in English. And from what I understand, it seems to be pretty simple.
No, great. I mean, the main point that I just got from that is convenience, convenience, convenience. And I think that's the main thing that really drives it home for me. I'm somebody. I do have a Nintendo Wii and a Dreamcast, and I did have to go out and purchase those adapters and everything in order to play it on my smart TV, which that was a hassle. Systems are a little older, so there have been a little bit of technical difficulties while trying to play them. With whether it be the motion bar or the or just the controller itself. If I can get something newer and play those old games that are still very popular, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll get no disagreement from me. I feel pretty much the same way. Um, but I guess what it is some people are just traditionalists. They have to play those original games on original hardware.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I can appreciate, but again, it's just not really something that I'm too picky about. I'll play on whatever works best for me.
Yeah, same here. I agree. Um, and like you said, there's a bunch of different ones out there. Especially more recently, I feel like you hear about more and more companies making clone consoles to play, the old NES or Super Nintendo or Genesis or whatever. Um, and I say, keep going with it. If you can put HDMI on it and let people play those games in HDMI and you make it affordable, people are definitely going to buy it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think the CD and the other console, if they're able to play PlayStation games, like I think for me that'd be awesome. I would love to acquire an original copy of Final Fantasy VII and be able to play that on my smart TV. At a very conveniently without having to find a PS2 or a PS1 and go through the process of hooking that up to my adapter. And to me, that's just another reason why or rather that PlayStation hasn't really caught up to Microsoft in the backwards compatibility scope or sphere.
Well, I mean, you say that, but just this week, what was it? Microsoft released that there's 13 original Xbox games that are now backwards compatible with the Xbox One. I actually think Microsoft is going the right way now with backwards compatibility, because on the Xbox One you can play 360 games and you can play original Xbox games, and PlayStation is kind of going the wrong way now, whereas originally on the PS2 and the early editions of PS3 they were backwards compatible, but now they stopped doing it on the PS3 and the PS4 is not backwards compatible, and they refuse to do it. They refuse to make the PS4 backwards compatible.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying, and that's why if given the opportunity, I would go out and purchase one of these clone consoles to be able to play those original games.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, and for me, it's not even so much the playing PlayStation games on it. I'm actually more interested in Sega CD because I have a Sega CD. It works, but it's like really finicky and like it's very fragile. Like you don't really want to get that thing and move it around too much, you know. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's like hooked up with the Model One version of the Genesis. So then there's that whole like metal thing that you have to put in where the cartridge slot is. Or well, I'm sorry, no, that's the 32X that goes with it. But it's really finicky, and I'm interested in Turbo CD games and Neo Geo CD games because Turbo CDs are very hard to find, and if you do find them, they're expensive. And the same thing with the Turbo Duo, which is the all-in-one. It can play the Hue cards and it can play the CDs, but that's like very difficult to find and very very expensive. The Neo Geo CD didn't even come out in the U.S., so that's hard to find, and then the games are expensive too. So if I can save some money and buy this all-in-one console that's going to play all of them, and then I can buy the games, I'm going to go that way with it instead of trying to hunt down a Neo Geo CD, TurboGrafx CD, and like spend probably around like you know 400 $500,
Oh yeah, exactly. That's not something that I would want to go through.
And hopefully with these clone consoles, hopefully they'll keep them affordable. um you know for something that plays that many systems, I'd probably pay around like a couple $100 for it. um I think any more than that you might be wanting too much from it, because then at that point people might be like, oh, I'll just buy the original hardware or whatever. um but yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the price point will be with those, but around that $200 price point might be a good price, I feel like.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, we talked about the clone consoles. Let's move on to reproduction games or repros. Do you have any experience with repros, Jim?
Not very much. I have seen some played on, like YouTube or anything, but I haven't played any myself.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this: what's your feelings on repros? Are you for them? Are you against them? I mean, it's one of those gray areas where it's kind of illegal technically to make repros or sell them. Um, it's illegal to own them too, technically. Um, but it's sort of a gray area. What's your feelings along those lines?
I think I don't really feel any negativity towards them. I think it's actually pretty amusing that they're made and people acquire them and play them. Um, when I was actually looking some things up, I found a couple that were pretty amusing to me. The way that they were, I guess, done and at it, kind of making two or three games into one game.
Oh yeah, so putting like three different games on one cartridge.
No, like combining two games and making them one game. I'll give you one example.
Okay.
I think I'm pronouncing this correctly. I found this one game for a clone console that came out over in Europe. The clone console is called the PlayStation. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I don't know if I've heard of ploy stations. I've heard of the poly station.
Okay, yeah, it might be the same. I might have just gotten the pronunciation or spelling wrong, but the name of this game is Smori.
Okay.
It's Somari, and it's Mario put into Sonic the Hedgehog.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen it the other way around. I've seen some games where Sonic is in like Mario's, like the Mushroom Kingdom, basically.
Okay, yeah, that's what this was. It was just the original Sonic game, but instead of playing as Sonic, you were playing as Mario.
Okay. Yeah, and I've seen some out there. It's like so originally it was called Sonic 4 before there was a Sonic 4, but they called it Sonic 4 and it was like a bootleg repro and it was basically Sonic in the Mushroom Kingdom. Yeah, so
Yeah, and
there's definitely stuff like that out there where there's like these really like cheap games or sometimes you'll see repro carts with like 50 games on one cartridge, something like that. Um Now, as far as reproductions go, I'm for them but in certain circumstances. For example, I own some repro carts for the Super Nintendo, and but what they are they're all games that never came out in the US. And in cases like this, I'm for reproductions. So basically, what they do is they take the ROM and then they put a English fan translation onto it, and then they put it in a cart, and then people sell them. So, for example, I have Secret of Mana 2, which never came out in the U.S. Um, so it's the game in English on a Super Nintendo cart that I can play on my Super Nintendo. In circumstances like that, I'm okay with it because I'm like, well, I'm never going to get to play that game and understand it unless I get the reproduction cart. So for me, that's the only way to play those games and to be able to understand what's going on. So for cases like that, I'm totally okay with reproductions.
yeah, I would say that I agree with that. It's kind of like you were never like the parent companies, the developers or whatever the overlying reason was. You never got the chance to purchase game, from a legal distributor, but because they just didn't release it in our area,
Right.
or our country rather.
Right. And the way I feel about it, I'm like, hey, I'd be more than happy to give the developer money and buy that game, but if you're not going to release it in the West, then how am I supposed to buy it from you, you know? So
Exactly.
I'm kind of like I'll buy the repro of it because I can get the game and understand it, you know?
Yeah.
Um so some of the other ones I have, like I said, I have Secret of Mana 3. I have uh, Ys 4 on the Super Nintendo. I have Terranigma on the Super Nintendo. I have Live Alive or Live a Live on the Super Nintendo. And, gosh, there's one more on the Super Nintendo, but I can't think of it. Another cartridge based game that I have is Mother 3, which was another big game. It's basically the sequel to Earthbound, which is one of the most popular Super Nintendo games. Um, there's the whole story about it. For those of you that don't know, originally they were working on a sequel on the Nintendo 64. Um, they kind of can't Nintendo canned it and they never came out with it. So then they developed it on the Game Boy Advance and it only ever came out in Japan. So basically what I have again is a ROM of the game with the English translation and I can play it on my Game Boy Advance. So again, a game that Nintendo refuses to bring over to the US. So it's like, well, I would be more than willing to give you my money, Nintendo, but you don't want to bring the game out here, so I'm gonna buy a repro of it.
Yeah. Hey, what else can you do?
Exactly. Um, and I have some other repros, and this is sort of another situation where I'm for getting a reproduction. Um, and that's when the game is super expensive and or super rare, so basically you would never be able to find the game, and if you did find the game you can't afford it anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
So for example, one of the and this is actually a disc-based game. Now the original Sega CD, they didn't have any copy protection on there. So basically, you could take a Sega CD game, burn it to a disc, and then play the burned disc on your Sega CD. Um, so this is a Sega CD game, and it's one of the most, if not the most expensive Sega CD game, and that's a game called Snatcher. Um, I basically bought a reproduction copy of this off of Etsy, and this is a game. I think it's about $600, and I'm not gonna pay $600 for a Sega CD game.
Oh yeah. I don't think I'd pay $600 for any game.
No, I wouldn't either. The most I'd probably pay for any one game is $100, and that would be tough to for me to do. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, this is like a $600 game, and it's very rare and hard to find. So I want to play the game because the game looks amazing. So I bought a repro of it because I want to play the game, and there's no other way for me to play it unless I pay $600 or get a reproduction game and pay like $30 for it. You know. Actually, I
Oh
don't
yeah.
even think it was that. I think it was like $20. So, but my only caveat to that is that I think that there has to be, and I think these people producing these reproduction games, I think that they should put some sort of identification on there saying that this is a reproduction. So that way people don't try to sell it and pass it off as an original game.
Oh yeah, definitely, especially for that game, that can, get up over 500, $600. Like that would be, like that's, that'd be like horrible if you, like do pay that much and you think you're getting the original, but for whatever reason you find out that it's a repro game that, like other people can get for $20. Like
Yeah.
I'd feel like so angry if that happened to me.
Yeah, now the disc games are a little bit harder to pass off as original because most of the time you can tell like a burned CD that you buy as opposed to the CD that you would get in an official Sega CD game, you know. You can tell the
Yeah.
difference, like all those CD rewritable discs, they're all identifiable. Like when you look at it, you can tell and say like this is a rewritable CD, you know, unless you really don't know anything about CDs or anything like that. But usually you can tell. So it's a little bit harder to do it on a CD game, but where you run into issues, especially with expensive games, is the cartridge based games. Now, I own one reproduction for a cartridge based game for a game that was released in the US, but it's just uh I guess it's not. Some people say it's rare, other people say it's not rare, but it's expensive, and I don't think I would ever pay the money for it. Especially, I don't even think the game's that great. I think it's an okay game, and that game's Earthbound. I basically own what they call Earthbound Uncut. So it's basically the original Japanese ROM of the game, and then with the English translation on it. Because they did change some stuff when they brought it over to the US. So I do own that. Um, Now, the uncut version has a different label and everything like that. So it's, you know that that's a different thing from the original game. But with Super Nintendo games, and especially expensive ones, people make reproduction carts and they put like the same label art on them. Sometimes they'll even take like old SNES cartridge for like a crappy sports game. They'll take out the chips in there and they'll put their own in there. So they try to make it look like the original game. Now that I have a problem with because I don't think that the people should do that. And I think if you are putting like original looking artwork, like the same artwork on that cartridge, you should again have something on there labeled reproduction so people don't try to pass it off as an original game.
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, for for the reasons I stated earlier, just like people basically getting scammed.
Yeah, so I think for games like, you hear it happening with Earthbound or Chrono Trigger. Those are some expensive games on the Super Nintendo. You always hear about people like making the reproductions of them, and then it's, they try to pass it off as an original. So in those cases, I'm very much, you know, I personally wouldn't buy reproduction carts like that. Like I mainly kind of stick with getting repros for games that are expensive or hard to find, or games that just weren't ever released here. That's kind of the repros I kind of try to stick with. But there is, some people will buy, repros for just whatever, Um, and to me, I would never buy, uh, you know, just like a regular, not that expensive repro game. Or even, I probably wouldn't even really want to buy like, even like an Earthbound or Chrono Trigger repro, mainly because you can get those games in different ways. It's more so also like if there's no other way for me to get these games except buying a repro, that's the only way I would buy a repro.
No, yeah, totally.
All right. So any other thoughts on repro games?
Um, no, not really. I mean, I haven't really seen too many. out. Then again, I haven't. I'm don't look as thoroughly for games as you do. But then then again, if the price is right, I personally do not care if it's repro or original.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, and I guess that I can understand that. I think the difference between you and me are kind of, I'm more so of a collector where you just you like to get the games and just play them. You're not really worried about collecting them or displaying them or anything like that. You just like to play the games.
Yeah, you get the nail right on the head with that one. Just give me the game and let me play it.
Okay. So then, what are you have any thoughts on emulation then?
Um, emulation. That's another thing that doesn't bother me at all. I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, but when I was a senior in high school, I took a computer class, and the teacher that we had was very laid back, and we did about maybe 15, 20 minutes of work in the class, and then the rest of the time kids would play either on one of the game sites that wasn't blocked, and then a lot of kids actually had ROMs of the original Pokemon games.
That's
That
awesome.
were ROMs or emulators, which whatever you want to call them. That they were playing, and I could never figure out how to get it to work on my computer, but all the rest of the kids seem to be playing them.
That's funny. I only say it's awesome because we went to the same high school, and a strict Catholic high school we went to. So I think it's just funny to me that kids are sitting there downloading ROMs to video games and then playing them during school,
Oh
during
yeah,
during computer class.
yep.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way with emulation. Like, you know, to me, I don't do it because I'm not really technologically inclined to do it. Like, I don't know how to do it. I can't say that I probably would if I did know how, but it's something. It doesn't really bother me. It is what it is. Some people emulate because that's how they want to try different games out. A lot of people will emulate it to try out a game, and then if they like it, they'll buy the game. I don't really have any problems with it. I do have a PSP that I purchased that has like a bunch of ROMs on there. Like it has a NES emulator and Super Nintendo emulator, and I have some ROMs on there. In fact, that's how I played Earthbound originally. Was on there. So that's something that doesn't really bother me. I think it's a good way for people to try different games and find new games that they like.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I've heard the same thing with with PSPs being the main one. And for basically anything, and and two, I think that's a way for, like I mentioned, the original Pokemon games. That was a way, for a lot of the kids in the class to play a game from when we were growing up that could have been lost to the abyss when they were in the years that have passed by.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to some of our usual topics we talk about every podcast. Uh, Jim, what have you been playing lately?
I've been playing a lot of games online lately. Been playing Smite, like I've talked about before. The MOBA multiplayer battle arena game. Just kind of leveling up different characters on that. They kind of have right now. They have the yearly Odyssey, which you go through different pantheons. I just finished the Japanese Odyssey, where it was like a lot of quest of play a Japanese god, or play as this specific god. Which was pretty interesting because my pool of characters wasn't very large, but recently there was a triple XP weekend, so I really played a lot of characters, and I have actually mastered about 35 of 90 gods in the game.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I have no idea about Smite. I actually did download it at one point, but I've never played it. But it sounds like you're really digging into that game.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because a lot of times the game's more like a more slower paced. You kind of have to think, when you're going to use your specific abilities, and like when to hit your ultimate and when not to, when to heal and when not to. I think that's true for most MOBA games, like League of Legends, which the World Championships is actually going on right now over in China. I think they're down to the final four, maybe even the final two now. I haven't
Oh,
really
cool,
kept up with it too much. And then the other MOBAs like Dota and Heroes at the Storm.
cool, cool.
Um, yeah, but I do have another game which is quickly risen up the list. It's another free to play game that I'm playing on the Xbox One, but it is available on PlayStation 4 and for PC. Fortnite.
Fortnite. I've never heard of it.
Yeah. There's actually two versions of Fortnite. There's actually, I think the original version is more of like a survival zombie type game where you can, build and use different traps to try to kill the zombies and weapons. But the version that I've been playing a lot is the Battle Royale. And I know that I've mentioned Battle Royale games a few times on this podcast, mentioning H1Z1, which was kind of the first one that I came upon, and then PlayerUnknown's Pub Battlegrounds, which is the other one, which is, I think, I've seen recently has the most concurrent players of any, online game at the moment.
Wow, how many players?
Um, North of 2 million. I think they're getting up to 3 million concurrent players.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, but Pub Battlegrounds, they say that it's going to be coming to Xbox One, but hasn't come yet, so it's only available on PC. Same goes for H1Z1. So when I heard about a MOBA or a battle royale game that I could play, on my Xbox One, I jumped at the chance, and I'm really enjoying it. I haven't won any matches. That is coming first out of 100 players, but I have finished in the top 10 three times, and then
Nice.
I've finished in the top 15 like maybe 25 times or so. And I don't really have a high kill count, for my matches. I usually top out about 4, and then I start to try to rush, and that's when I just bite it.
Okay. Now, how you say you finished in the top 10 or 15? Out of how many people is that? How many players?
Um, the max players that can get into a game is 100. So that's when the lobby usually closes when 100 get in. And I mean, some people for whatever reason, they might get kicked out. But I mean, most games are 100 to maybe 97. When you finally are able to spawn in. And
Wow,
the
that's
way that you spawn in is like you kind of parachute down or glide down. You use a glider actually from a bus that flies over the battlefield, which is on an island.
wow, dude. That's pretty impressive to finish in the top 10 out of 100 people. That's really good.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right when you usually land, that's when the initial slaughter is. So in the left hand side of my screen, I always see like the kill feed going off.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the battle royale games have an added like feature, which in H1Z1 it's poison gas, and then Pub Battlegrounds, I'm not really sure what it is. I think it's some kind of like lightning. And then in Fortnite it's similar to Pub Battlegrounds. It's like a storm, and the size of the storm free zone kind of recedes every like 5 minutes or so. So the actual playable map gets smaller and smaller. And that's kind of how they bring people to closer to take each other out. And some people get caught and killed in the storm, because the storm, for the amount of time that you're in the storm, it takes off damage for each second, or it takes off your health.
Cool, cool. Well, good luck in your online games. But what I want to know is what's your next non-online game gonna be?
Ooh, I'm not sure. I've been thinking about maybe. I still have a couple Final Fantasy games for PlayStation 4. I have Final Fantasy X too, so I might want to finish off the set there because even though it took me months and months, I finally beat Final Fantasy X, back at the beginning of the spring. So I could play that, and I also have Final Fantasy Type Zero, which is a game that I really want to play. And then I could also, I'm also thinking about possibly hooking up my Dreamcast and playing Shenmue.
Hmm. Well, my suggestion would be is definitely don't play 10-2. At least not yet. Uh, Type Zero definitely looks better than 10-2. I would play Type Zero over that. I haven't played either one of those games. Well, I played a little bit of 10-2, but not a whole lot. But I would say maybe play Shenmue. I mean, that's supposed to be a classic, you know. Everybody raves about that game. I own Shenmue. I haven't played it yet either. Um, but if I were in your shoes, I'd probably play Shenmue next.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good point. But I'm not sure when that will be because this time next weekend I'll be probably playing a lot of Call of Duty World War II because
Uh,
through the pre-order.
so
Well, it's actually coming out on the 3rd.
so that's what you'll be playing next. Although, will you play that online or will you play a single player campaign or both? Can you do both on that or?
Yeah, you can do both, and from what I've seen, the story looks epic. So I definitely will be playing through the story, and then I'll just have to see what I've been talking to a few of my buddies about, kind of getting a squad together to play online, and maybe we can play through the story together as well.
Cool, cool. So then touching on that, you haven't gotten that yet. Have you gotten any new games lately?
No, I haven't gotten any new games lately. That's the only one, and I kind of placed the pre-order for that. Back in August actually. So I'm just waiting for that to come, and I've had a few other purchases that have kind of taken up my bank account. So I haven't really purchased anything new as of yet.
Okay. Well, I'm still currently playing. I think in the last podcast I was playing this, but I'm still playing on my Vita. I'm playing Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 2. Um, it's a RPG, of course. I'm the RPG guy on the podcast. Um, it's the sequel to the first one. I'm about 50 hours in. I definitely have liked the first one better. This one's still good though, still a very good game. I just prefer the first one, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a good game. Um, so yeah, I'm really enjoying that. 50 hours in. I probably have maybe another 20 to 30 hours left in the game. I'm not sure. Um, and as for new games, I've actually gotten a lot of stuff since our last podcast. I actually was given a $100 gift card to eBay for my birthday, so I ended up I bought a bunch of Vita games and a couple PSP games. Uh, the Vita games I got, and let me see if I can remember them all. I got Drive Girls, I got Corpse Party, I got uh, Danganronpa, Trigger Happy Havoc, or whatever it's called. I got that game. Um, Gosh, a couple other ones I can't think of. Um, what else have I gotten? I got uh, Astivine Hearts from Limited Run Games, which is an RPG on the Vita. I got my collector's edition for Ys Origins on the Vita. I got a regular edition of Ys Origins, but I got That one from Play Asia. Um, the two PSP games I got were Popolo Croyus, which is an RPG that was on the original PlayStation, but the PSP version combines the first two games. Um, the other one I got is an RPG. It's called like Blazing Souls Aceliad or something like that. That's an RPG. And then today, actually, my wife surprised me, and she had pre-ordered Mario Odyssey for me, so that came in the mail today. So I just got that today as well. So I've gotten a bunch of games since our last podcast. Man, I really wish I could think of the other Vita games I got, but it's just not coming to me. Oh, I got my pre-order from for Undertale on the Vita, so that came in. Yeah, so a lot of games I've gotten. I actually have people that are listening to this. They might have watched my video on my Vita collection. I could probably do a whole new video for my Vita collection because I have so many more Vita games that I've gotten since then. And I actually forgot a couple on that. Couple of the special edition games that I had for the Vita. I forgot to even include in the video. But I probably won't do another Vita video for a while. So yeah, that's what I've gotten lately.
Wow, you really add to your collection.
Yeah, I think we were talking the other day, and you said, "When are you gonna play all these games?" And I was just like, "Oh, I don't know, probably when I retire."
Geez, I mean, or that's just an excuse to retire early.
That's true. But who knows? If I keep buying all these games, I might not be able to retire early.
Yeah, that's what I think about. I'm always like, man, I have all these video games that I want to play, but it like really hurts when the 8 hours of my 8 to 10 hours of my day are just spent commuting to work and then working and then commuting back.
And this is true. This is the life of an adult gamer.
Yep, unfortunately.
All right. Well, you have anything else you want to add to the podcast tonight?
I just want to say that I have added a couple games to my list though.
Oh, do tell.
Well, I mean, another game that's going to be online, but another game that looks like it has a great story component to it, and that is Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Okay. Yeah, I think from what I've heard, EA really stepped up their game and improved from that first one on the PS4.
Oh yeah, I severely hope so because that first game was a travesty. I mean, I liked playing online, but then only being able to get to play as the Rebels or the Empire and having no story whatsoever got old fast.
Yeah, that seems like such a misstep. Like, how could you not think people would want a story, to play through in the game? Like, you really think people just want to go online and have battles? Not for a Star Wars game.
Oh yeah, and I mean, because in my personal opinion, Star Wars Battlefront 2 that came out for the PlayStation 2 was amazing.
Yeah, it really was a great
the story
game.
of a basically went through the diary of a retired clone trooper, which I've always actually liked the clone troopers and the stormtroopers, so I thought that was awesome. And then getting my hopes really high for Star Wars Battlefront, and then having them dashed, against the rocks was hurt pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I do have one more game that is added to my list. This is a series that has been around for quite a while, and it was actually just rebooted a few years ago, I believe, on the PlayStation 3. But that is Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus.
Okay. Yeah, I hear good things about the game.
Yeah, I watched a playthrough of, I guess, the of the new Wolfenstein that came out a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I kind of regret not going out and getting it, but it's somebody that studied history and somebody that has an interest in alternative history, the Wolfenstein games, are definitely right up my alley.
Yeah, isn't the new game that's coming out, isn't, or is it out yet, or is it's coming out, or?
Yeah, it's coming out. I'm not sure if it is out as of yet.
Okay. Yeah, I think the what isn't it like it's like an alternate version of history where like the Nazis won the Second World War or something like that, and they like they're basically like they took over the US or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, in the last game, the main character, BJ Blazkowicz, kind of wakes up in an asylum from like a 20-year coma, and it's now like the early to mid '60s, and he's just realizing, that the Nazis won the war. So it kind of followed him, kind of taking people down in Europe, and now it appears that he's back, back stateside, and gonna try to uproot the Nazis out of out of North America.
Cool, cool. It sounds interesting.
Oh
And
yeah, definitely. It's
I'm,
definitely a game that I'll be keeping an eye out for.
I'm not even a first person shooter fan, but that game sounds kind of cool. I'm kind of I kind of like alternate history type of stuff like that too. So the story sounds cool.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else to add. So I'd just like to thank everyone for listening. Um, if you want to listen to further content, future podcasts, future collection videos, please subscribe and like the video. Um, you know, uh, like I said, we usually try to keep doing these podcasts. Originally we were trying to do them every other week. Um, we try to stick to that, but sometimes stuff comes up. Sometimes we can't do it every other week, and sometimes sometimes we just struggle to find content to talk about. Um, but yeah, we're trying to podcast as much as we can. So thanks to everyone for sticking with us and listening to the show. Jim, do you have any final thoughts?
Really just to thank everybody for continuing to listen, and any newcomers, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you guys have any topics or any questions that you would like us to cover in future videos, go ahead and leave those down in the comments section.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. If you have any ideas for future topics for the podcast, please let us know down in the comments section. We're definitely open to suggestions. All right. Well, like I said before, thanks for listening. And until next time, talk to you later.